Jazz. Have you ever looked at someone you loved with your whole heart, only to realize one day that every smile they gave you was hiding a lie? People always say betrayal comes without warning. They're wrong, Jazz. The warning signs are always there. We just don't want to see them, because love has a strange way of making us blind. My name is Emma. 3 years ago, if you had met me, Jazz, you would have said I had the perfect life, a beautiful home, a successful husband, a growing business, friends who admired our relationship, family who called us the perfect couple, Jazz. And I believed every single word. If someone had told me that the man sleeping beside me every night was living 2 completely different lives, I would have laughed, Jazz. I trusted Daniel more than I trusted myself. That trust became the biggest mistake I ever made. But what he didn't know was that every lie leaves behind a tiny crack. And one day, Jazz, those cracks become impossible to hide. When the truth finally came out, I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I didn't chase him. Instead, I uncovered a secret he had spent years protecting, Jazz. A secret so carefully hidden that exposing it changed his entire life. This isn't just a story about cheating. It's a story about lies, about pride, about calm, Jazz, and about how the quietest person in the room can become the strongest. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, keep listening, because sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone. Sometimes, Jazz, it's simply about letting the truth speak louder than their lies. 3 years earlier, life felt almost magical. Every morning started the same way. Daniel would wake up before me, Jazz. He always made coffee. The smell filled the kitchen before I even opened my eyes. When I walked downstairs, he'd already have 2 mugs waiting. Morning beautiful. He never missed saying it, not once, Jazz. I'd smile, kiss his cheek, and we'd sit together before work. Those small moments became my favorite part of every day. People think relationships survive because of grand romantic gestures, Jazz. They're wrong. They survive because of ordinary mornings. Chit breakfasts, small conversations, laughing over burnt toast, watching the rain through the kitchen window, Jazz. Those simple moments convinced me I had found my forever. Daniel worked as a financial consultant. He was ambitious, calm, confident. People naturally trusted him. Clients loved him, Jazz. Friends respected him. Even strangers seemed comfortable around him. I owned a small online home decor business. It wasn't huge, but it was growing every month, Jazz. I loved designing warm spaces for families. It made me happy knowing something I created became part of someone's home. Daniel always encouraged me. "You'll have your own company building one day," he'd say. "I already do. You know what I mean." Then he'd laughed. I believed every word. Whenever I doubted myself, he always seemed to know exactly what to say. Looking back, Jazz, I sometimes wonder if that encouragement was genuine, or if he simply knew exactly what I wanted to hear. But back then, there wasn't a single reason to question him. At least, that's what I thought, Jazz. Friday nights belonged to us. No work, no phones, no meetings. We'd order food, watch old films, and make fun of terrible acting. Daniel always fell asleep halfway through, Jazz. I'd take pictures of him snoring just to embarrass him later. He hated those photos, or at least, he pretended to. Looking back at those pictures now, I see something different, Jazz. Sometimes he'd fall asleep with his phone tightly in his hand. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, I know better. Funny how memories change once the truth arrives. Everyone loved Daniel, Jazz. My parents adored him. My father once told me, "You chose a good man." Those words stayed with me. My mother often joked that Daniel treated me better than my own father ever had, Jazz. Daniel smiled politely every time she said it. He knew exactly how to make people believe in him. Birthdays, family dinners, holiday gatherings. He remembered everyone's favorite foods, Jazz. bought thoughtful gifts, never forgot an anniversary. He was too perfect. But perfection is dangerous because real people make mistakes. Only people wearing masks seem flawless, Jazz. One Saturday afternoon, my best friend Olivia visited. We'd known each other since university. Olivia had an incredible ability to notice things other people ignored. She watched people carefully, Jazz. Sometimes a little too carefully. Daniel greeted her warmly, made coffee, asked about work. Everything seemed normal. After he left for the supermarket, Olivia became strangely quiet. What? She hesitated. Nothing. No, tell me, she shrugged. I just think Daniel is… What? She looked uncomfortable. I don't know, I laughed. That's not an answer. She smiled awkwardly. Forget it. I refused. You started it, she sighed. Sometimes he feels like he's performing. I frowned. What does that even mean? I don't know how to explain it. You think my husband is fake? No. Then? It's just she searched for the words. He always says exactly the right thing. I laughed again. That's called being kind. Maybe. Definitely. She smiled. I hope I'm wrong, Jazz. I remember feeling slightly annoyed. Daniel had done nothing wrong. Nothing. So why would she even suggest something like that? Later that evening, I told Daniel. He chuckled. Jazz. Olivia doesn't trust anyone. She's just protective. I know, you aren't upset, he smiled. Why would I be? Then he kissed my forehead. I've got nothing to hide, Jazz. Those 6 words echoed in my mind years later. I've got nothing to hide, funny. Because they turned out to be the biggest lie he ever told. Autumn arrived. Business became busier, Jazz. Daniel started traveling more, client meetings, conferences, new Dician events, at least. That's what he said. His suitcase became a regular sight in our hallway. One night I joked, I should start charging rent for that suitcase. He laughed. Success comes with travel. I miss you. I know. He hugged me tightly. I'll make it up to you. And somehow he always did flowers, Jazz. Little gifts, sweet messages, everything looked normal. Every missing day was followed by an even bigger display of affection. Back then, I saw romance. Now, I recognize guilt. One evening, Jazz. Daniel returned from a 2-day business trip. He looked exhausted. I hugged him. You okay? Long meetings. You should rest. He nodded. While unpacking, his phone buzzed. Jazz. He grabbed it so quickly that I barely noticed the screen light up. It lasted only a second. But I caught something, a heart emoji. Just one. Maybe it was from a client, maybe from family. Jazz. Maybe from no one important. I didn't ask. Because trust tells you not to ask unnecessary questions. Sometimes, trust becomes silence. Winter arrived with heavy rain and freezing mornings. Jazz. Daniel seemed distracted, not distant, just distracted. He'd stare at his phone while smiling, then lock the screen the moment I entered the room again. I ignored it. Jazz. Because every relationship deserves privacy, right? At least that's what I kept telling myself. Christmas was beautiful. Our house glowed with lights. Friends filled the living room. Jazz. Music echoed through every corner. Everyone laughed. Everyone celebrated. Daniel stood beside me with one arm around my shoulders. Someone raised a glass. To Emma and Daniel. Jazz. The happiest couple we know. Everyone cheered. Daniel smiled. I smiled. The photos from that night still exist. 2 smiling faces. One happy marriage. One perfect illusion. What no one knew, Jazz, was that while our friends celebrated us, someone else was already waiting for Daniel's midnight message. January brought new opportunities, Jazz. My online business received an invitation to collaborate with a luxury furniture brand. It was the biggest opportunity I'd ever had. I cried when I read the email. Daniel hugged me. I told you, Jazz, you'll become huge. I couldn't have done it without you. He smiled warmly. I'll always support your dreams. I believed him because that's what wives do. They believe even when they shouldn't, Jazz. As my business grew, I became busier than ever. Long hours, video meetings, product launches, cover events. Daniel encouraged me to focus. I'll handle everything at home. He cooked more often, Jazz. Cleaned the house, paid bills, helped errands. I felt incredibly lucky. Friends joked that I'd won the husband lottery. Maybe I thought I had. Little did I know. While I was building my dream, Jazz, Daniel was carefully protecting a secret that could destroy everything we had built together. And the most frightening part? The first real clue wasn't hidden in his phone. It wasn't lipstick on a shirt, Jazz. It wasn't a mysterious message. It wasn't a late-night phone call. It came from someone I had never met. A complete stranger who walked into my life carrying nothing more than a single sentence, Jazz. A sentence that would make me question every memory, every promise, and every "I love you" Daniel had ever spoken. At that moment, Jazz, I had no idea that one conversation was about to begin the hardest chapter of my life. And once I heard those words, there would be no turning back. I used to believe life changed with one big event, Jazz. A wedding, a new job, a move to another city. But I learned that sometimes everything begins to fall apart because of one ordinary afternoon. It was a Tuesday, cold grey, Jazz. The kind of day that made everyone rush from one place to another without looking up. I had just finished a meeting with a furniture company that wanted to carry my designs, Jazz. It had gone better than I could have imagined. For the first time in years, I felt as though every late night and every sacrifice had finally been worth it. I walked out of the building smiling, Jazz. Daniel would be proud. I couldn't wait to tell him. I stopped at a small cafe a few streets away. The place wasn't crowded. Soft music played through hidden speakers, Jazz, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. I ordered a cappuccino and found a table by the window. Outside, people hurried past with umbrellas. Inside, everything felt peaceful, Jazz. I opened my laptop to reply to a few emails. For nearly 20 minutes, nothing unusual happened. Then someone stopped beside my table. "Excuse me, are you Emma?" I looked up. A woman stood there, perhaps in her early 30s. She wore a long beige coat and held a paper cup in one hand. She looked nervous, very nervous. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I think I might have the wrong person." "No, Jazz," I replied with a polite smile. "I'm Emma." Her face changed, not with happiness, with worry. She looked as though she wanted to say something, but couldn't decide whether she should. "I'm sorry to interrupt." "It's okay." She hesitated. You're married to Daniel Brooks, aren't you?" For a second I simply smiled. "Yes." She lowered her eyes. "Oh, Jazz." Something about that tiny response made my stomach tighten. "You know him?" She forced a smile. "We've met, through work. I suppose you could say that." There was an awkward silence. I waited, Jazz. She looked at the floor, then at the door, then back at me. Finally she whispered, "I shouldn't have said anything." Before I could ask another question, she turned and walked away, Jazz. I watched her disappear into the rain. The whole conversation lasted less than a minute. Yet it stayed with me for the rest of the day. Who was she? Why had she looked frightened, Jazz? And why did hearing Daniel's name seem to upset her? I told myself I was imagining things. There had to be a simple explanation, there always was. Or so I believed. That evening, Daniel came home carrying my favorite flowers, white lilies. "I have news," I said excitedly. He smiled. "So do I. You first." "No," he laughed. "You've got that look, Jazz." I told him everything about the meeting, every detail, every compliment the company had given my designs. When I finished, he hugged me tightly. "I knew you could do it." His voice sounded genuine, Jazz. His smile looked real. If I hadn't met that strange woman earlier, I never would have questioned it. Over dinner, I casually asked, "Did you meet many new clients this week?" He nodded. A few. Gaz. Any interesting ones? Not really. What about women? He laughed. What about them? I met someone today. His hand stopped moving for a fraction of a second. So, she said she'd met you. Oh, Gad. She seemed uncomfortable. Daniel shrugged. I meet hundreds of people, I know. It was probably business. He continued eating as though the conversation meant nothing. I wanted to believe him, so I did. Over the next few weeks, life became busy again. Auris poured into my business. I hired 2 new employees. Daniel traveled twice. Everything seemed normal, Gaz. Yet something inside me had changed. Not because I suspected him, because I had started paying attention. For the first time, I noticed little things. His phone never left his pocket, Gaz. He smiled at messages he never mentioned. Sometimes he'd step into another room to answer calls. When I entered, he'd already ended them. None of those things proved anything. Individually, Gaz, they were ordinary. Together, they began forming questions. Questions I wasn't ready to ask. One Saturday morning, Daniel suggested we visit my parents. Dad was outside repairing the garden fence. Gaz. Mum had baked her famous apple pie. The house smelled exactly the way it had when I was a child. Comforting save, Dad greeted Daniel with a hug. Still looking after my daughter? Daniel laughed. Yours. Always, you'd better. Everyone smiled, but during lunch I noticed something strange. Dad asked Daniel about a recent conference. You enjoyed Manchester? Daniel looked confused. Manchester, Gaz. The conference, oh, he smiled awkwardly. That one, it was in Manchester, wasn't it? Daniel cleared his throat. Actually, they changed the venue at the last minute. Dad nodded. Gaz, that happens. The conversation moved on. No one else noticed. I did, because Daniel had told me the conference was in Birmingham. Maybe I remembered wrong. Maybe Dad had. Gaz. Maybe Daniel had simply mixed them up. It was a tiny mistake. Tiny, but it stayed in my mind. That night I couldn't sleep. I wasn't angry. I wasn't suspicious. Just curious. I opened my phone. Gaz. I searched Daniel's company website. The conference dates matched. Then I searched the event schedule. Location Manchester, not Birmingham. I stared at the screen. Gaz. Perhaps he'd traveled through both cities. Perhaps he'd forgotten. It wasn't impossible. Still, I closed my phone feeling uneasy. Not because I'd found proof, because for the first time, Gaz, I'd caught him saying something that wasn't true. The next morning, I decided to let it go. Relationships couldn't survive if every little mistake became an investigation. Trust mattered, Gaz. I refused to become someone who searched through phones or checked every movement. That wasn't love, at least, not the kind of love I believed in. So I focused on work. Weeks passed, Gaz. Business continued growing. Spring arrived, flowers appeared in gardens across the city. Life looked beautiful again. Almost then Olivia called. You busy? A little? I need coffee. You never need coffee, I do today. Her voice sounded serious. An hour later we sat in our favorite cafe. She looked uncomfortable. Emma, what? I saw Daniel yesterday. She nodded. Where? You near Riverside. Oh, he wasn't alone. I smiled. Probably a client. I thought that too. She looked at me carefully. They were holding hands. Everything inside me became still. I laughed. Gaz. Not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. Olivia, I'm serious. No, I wish I wasn't. You probably saw someone else. She slowly took out her phone. I thought that. Gaz. Then she placed it on the table. I took this because I wasn't sure. My hands suddenly felt cold. On the screen, Daniel stood outside a restaurant. Facing him was a woman. Her face wasn't clear, Gaz. But his was. And although the photo captured only one moment, their hands were unmistakably linked. I couldn't speak. Olivia reached across the table. I'm sorry. There has to be an explanation, Gaz. I hope there is. There has to be. I repeated those words more for myself than for her. When I got home that evening, Daniel was cooking dinner. He smiled exactly the way he always did. Perfect timing. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the kitchen. Normally it would have made me hungry. Instead, I felt sick. "Long day?" he asked. "A little." He walked over and kissed my forehead. Jazz. Everything about him felt familiar, comforting, yet for the first time, I wondered whether I'd ever truly known the man standing in front of me. I almost showed him the photograph, almost, Jazz. But something stopped me, if there was an explanation. I wanted to hear it naturally. If there wasn't, I didn't want to warn him that I was asking questions. So I said nothing. We ate dinner, Jazz. We watched television. We went to bed. He fell asleep within minutes. I lay awake until sunrise, listening to the sound of the man I loved breathing beside me, Jazz, while wondering if every promise he'd ever made had been built on lies. The next morning, Daniel left early for work. As soon as the front door closed, I sat at the kitchen table, Jazz. The house felt strangely quiet. I looked around. Everything inside those walls told the story of our marriage: wedding photographs, holiday souvenirs, birthday cards, anniversary gifts, years of memories. Were they real? Or had I been the only one living inside them? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered, "Hello." For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then a woman's voice, soft, careful. "I don't have much time." "Who is this? You don't know me." My heart started racing. "But I know your husband, Jazz." Every nerve in my body froze. "I've tried to stay away from this." "What are you talking about? I'm sorry. Who are you?" There was another pause. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "Jazz, Daniel isn't just hiding an affair. He's hiding something much bigger." Before I could say another word, "Call," I stared at the phone. The number was already unavailable. Jazz. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know why she'd called, but deep inside, I knew one thing: this story was no longer just about another woman. It was about a secret, Jazz. A secret Daniel had spent years protecting, and I was finally standing at the edge of discovering it. The phone call ended, but the woman's words stayed with me. Daniel isn't just hiding an affair, Jazz. He's hiding something much bigger. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't ignore my instincts. Instead of confronting Daniel immediately, I quietly started looking for answers, Jazz. Over the next few days, I paid attention to everything: his late-night phone calls, his sudden business trips, the way he always kept one drawer in his home office locked. One Friday evening, Jazz, Daniel left in a hurry, saying he had an emergency client meeting. The moment his car disappeared, I walked into his office. Inside the locked drawer, I found a small key taped underneath the desk, Jazz. It opened a metal box hidden at the back of the cabinet. Inside were old documents, bank statements, property papers, and dozens of printed emails. As I read them, my hands began to shake, Jazz. Daniel hadn't just been lying to me. For nearly 5 years, he had secretly been moving money into another company under a different name. The company wasn't his, Jazz. It belonged to the woman he had been seeing. He had promised her a future while using our savings to build a life with her. Even worse, Jazz, many of the business ideas that made his company successful had originally come from conversations with me. He had quietly taken my ideas, presented them as his own, and earned praise while I never knew, Jazz. The affair had broken my heart, but this betrayal destroyed my trust completely. I finally understood why that stranger had called me. She wasn't trying to ruin my marriage, Jazz. She was trying to save me from a much bigger lie. That night, I put every document back exactly where I had found it. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I made a plan. The following week, I met a lawyer, Jazz. I shared every document, every bank statement, every email. The lawyer looked at me and said, You've done the right thing by staying calm. Those words gave me strength. Over the next month, Gaz, we quietly gathered everything we needed. Financial records, ownership documents to claim backups. There was no need for revenge through anger. The truth would do all the work. Meanwhile, Daniel continued acting like the perfect husband. He brought flowers home, cooked dinner, smiled for our friends. He had no idea that I already knew everything. One evening, he even looked at me and said, "Gaz, I don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled politely. Inside, I knew those words meant nothing anymore. Then came our wedding anniversary. Daniel booked a beautiful dinner with both our families and several close friends. He planned a romantic speech about love, trust, and commitment. He wanted everyone to believe we were still the perfect couple. As he stood to raise his glass, he smiled confidently. "I've been blessed with the most wonderful wife." Before he could continue, I stood up. "I'd like to say something too." Everyone turned toward me. Daniel smiled. He thought I was about to thank him. Instead, I connected my laptop to the television in the private dining room. The first slide appeared: bank transfers, then company records, then emails. Every document was genuine. Every date matched, every lie was backed by proof. The room became completely silent. Daniel's smile disappeared. "Emma," he whispered. I looked at him calmly. "You told everyone you had nothing to hide." I clicked to the next screen. A timeline showed years of hidden accounts and false business claims. Then came photographs showing him meeting the other woman during the same trips he had called business conferences. Nobody spoke. His parents looked shocked. My parents sat frozen. Our friends couldn't believe what they were seeing. Daniel finally tried to speak. "I can explain." I quietly replied, "You've had years to explain, Gaz. There has to be context." There was. I looked him in the eyes. "You just never expected anyone to find it." Without another word, I closed my laptop. I thanked everyone for listening. Then I walked out of the restaurant. No shouting, no insults, no dramatic scene, just the truth. Over the following months, everything changed. The legal process ended fairly. My business continued growing faster than ever. The furniture partnership became a huge success. I moved into a smaller home that felt peaceful for the first time in years. As for Daniel, the life he had carefully built around lies slowly fell apart. His reputation suffered. Business partners lost confidence. The secret he had protected for years became impossible to hide. I never celebrated his downfall. I simply moved forward. Because real revenge isn't watching someone lose everything. Real revenge is refusing to let their betrayal define your future. A year later, I received one final message from an unknown number. It was from the woman who had called me months before. It simply read, "I'm glad you finally learned the truth. You deserved better." I smiled. Then I deleted the message. I didn't need answers anymore. I had already found something far more valuable: my peace. Looking back now, I don't hate Daniel. I pity the life he chose. Because lies always demand more lies. Secrets become heavier every year. And sooner or later, the truth always finds a way into the light. If there's one lesson my story taught me, it's this: never ignore the small signs just because you love someone. Trust should be earned every day, not assumed forever. And when someone betrays your heart, don't waste your life chasing revenge. Stand tall, protect your dignity, and let the truth speak for itself. In the end, the greatest victory isn't exposing the person who hurt you. It's becoming someone their betrayal could never destroy.